Schönen guten Morgen. Ich hoffe, jeder hat sich gut erholt und ist wieder hier von der Party gestern Abend. Bitte? Yeah, thank you in English. Seems like I partied too long, even if I did not, but yeah. Thanks, Rainer. So, welcome to the session, and I'm happy to be joined by my dear colleague Matthias Rapp from Tricentis to bring you the acceleration on what we have done in the past years with the Tricentis solutions and how you can ensure if you go with SAP Cloud ALM, but also with the Tricentis solution extension program. As I'm a product manager, I have a typical disclaimer, as well as Tricentis does, because we can change at any point in time anything. So please be aware that what we tell you can be changed at some point. For who doesn't know it, I give you a brief overview of what the Tricentis portfolio consists of. First of all, the partner in crime here is a so-called solution extension partner. Solution extension partners is the highest software level partnership you can get within the SAP ecosystem. And this is really where we test the partner's software against our internal SAP product standards. So that means if we release the Tricentis solution or other solution extension solutions, they fulfill the same standards as your S4 implementation or your Ariba SuccessFactors, etc. We also build long-term partnerships and long-term roadmaps with these partners and do also co-innovative stuff, which you will see today. The good thing for our customers is that for you, nothing changes. You request support tickets, you request any contacts directly by SAP, and we sell it as one of our products. And this is really where this partnership comes in. And in terms of Tricentis, we have a really good staffed portfolio for the testing industry and for providing you a testing platform to continuously innovate and deliver into production. Mainly, we want to answer 4 main questions when it comes to testing. Especially, the first one is, what do you need to test? Instead of running 10,000 of regression tests every month, every quarter, we have a tool which is called Change Impact Analysis, which helps you with addressing exactly the tests you should run to mitigate your risk going into production. Then we have a functional testing tool for test automation, which comes to the question, does it work? Can I log into my application? Can I create a sales order? Can I onboard a new hire? All of that powered by the platform of Tricentis with these 2 tools. One is more for private cloud, the other one is more in a public cloud deployment. Doesn't mean, because I get asked that question quite often, these are just the deployment options of the solution. For sure, you can test with them on-prem, hybrid scenarios, private cloud, public cloud scenarios as well. The next one is the data integrity. Great fit for data spheres implementations, where you need to test the entire ETL landscape, going from a file into your databases until your SAP Analytics Cloud reports or any other reporting tool where you really want to see the complete transformation and integration of your data and into the end tools. And then for sure, does my environment scale? This is where enterprise performance testing comes in. Can I log in with 500 users, 1,000 users at the same time? I give you a little example about that, because that's a little bit internal, but that you can imagine what we are doing that, because we are also using these tools internally. We have a coffee ordering app within our Bangalore office. And you can imagine if there are not just 500 people in this office, there are thousands of people in the office. And the colleagues there were supposed to test how many orders can happen within a second. So you can imagine at 10 a.m. in the morning in the Bangalore office, everyone wants to go for coffee or tea, because you can also order tea there. But we really tested, or the colleagues tested, at which point would the app crash, and where are the SLAs, and where is the agreed data load which the app can handle. Then this should actually give you the idea of really defining SLAs and the performance of the system with your business, right? How many people can log in from a different location? How many people can create a sales order in a second, right? This is then really where we see that. And for sure, all the tools integrate with SAP Solution Manager, as well as SAP Cloud ALM, and are part of our transformation toolkit. Okay. Did we hide too much? No. You have seen this slide already, I guess, in the session of Rainer and Christina yesterday. But I want to illustrate that within the SAP Cloud ALM, we can manage basically everything in test management. We can do your cloud as on-prem solutions, and it works for SAP as well as non-SAP. Why are we so precise on telling you it's also working for non-SAP is because with the test automation, you want to test at some point end-to-end. You really want to test, are my PDF invoices correct? Are processes which come from a host system and go into SAP, for example, this still exists, yeah? Are these working during this transformation? And that's really what we can build also within SAP Cloud ALM test management. We also manage the manual testing as well as the automated testing to give you the full traceability of your test cycle and within your test implementation and test project. And then it comes to the automation framework, and that's where we also have, for sure, the test automation tool for S/4HANA public cloud customers, but also, and this is also included within your SAP Cloud ALM subscription, the Tricentis test automation tool. So if you go today into your Cloud ALM tenant, you will find a button, and you can provision within 5 minutes your tenant. How does it work? For sure, you have defined your processes, your requirements, and you have your user stories. And then when it comes to test automation, when you create a automated test case, we hand it over to the Tricentis tool in this case. And that's where really the artifact of your test automation and your data variants are then created. So you design your flow there, you really do the test automation, you create your sales order, for example, and then we execute in this environment. So we get the trigger, and it goes from the test execution in Cloud ALM. We get the request over to the Tricentis tool, and this then goes into your system under test. And also the way back, right? Because we want the results for full traceability in SAP Cloud ALM. Okay, now it doesn't want me. Sorry, that was too fast. But also not to get, and I see Rainer's face, he's like, why is that slide up there? It is important for a later part. You all know this picture from SAP Solution Manager, and we have our test plans and test packages and so on. And so I guess a lot of people have already created a lot of test cases, and especially with Tricentis Tosca in Solution Manager. You have your test configurations. And guess what? I will show you later on how you can move these automated test cases from Solution Manager in Cloud ALM with just a few clicks. No migration needed at all. But before I do that, I show you what else we delivered. We have now, within a full SaaS test automation solution, which is state-of-the-art, desktop automation. When we released the product, we offered web automation, but now we even include, for example, SAP GUI automation, which was requested by many, many customers and by many, many partners. We also launched, by beginning of the year in Q2, the possibility to upgrade your tenant, which is then SAP Test Automation by Tricentis. So this gives you the capabilities of going beyond the limits, which are part of the usage rights of Tricentis Test Automation within your subscription. And then we also have API automation now included also for all your SAP APIs. So you can go ahead and test your integration suite, for example. And then finally, that's what I'm also going to show you, how to upload test cases directly in your cloud environment. OK. So that's where I jump for a second. Oh, here. So for the feature number 1 and feature number 4, which we delivered, I show you that together, because I will upload the test case. But how easy is it to upgrade your tenant? We actually made it quite simple. So you just click a button, and you get automatically an intake form, which goes to your AE, so your account executive within your company, and they know that you are interested in upgrading your tenant, because we need to set up the contracts, etc. But there's no phone calls, no anything. It's a simple form which you fill, and the colleagues get notified. And then, once this is done, you even have then, beyond the limits, whatever you bought. You can also then, in the future, buy so-called cloud agents, which you already can see, because we're in a demo environment here. But this cloud agent will also enable you to execute your test cases within the cloud, like fully in the cloud, which means your web test cases, you don't need to host anything, no environment needed at all. Everything runs fully in the cloud. OK. Then let's see an API test case. So we have here a simple API. You see the payload down there. It's for phones. And you can also test this. So by a simple click, I can see what is the payload. I can see what is the response. And then I can add certain verifications, give it a certain name. I can, by simply clicking, and add a new verification. I can make that dependent on the status code, for example, if I want to test that. I can verify via XPath or the JSON patterns, etc. So all possibilities are there for the payload, which is included. So if we, for example, take the status code, and we can say, OK, this should be equal to 200. Give that as name. And once we save it, I then can jump over to my API test case. And I have here the endpoint for sure, but I also have then here my status code, and can run that immediately within my cloud environment in this case. For sure, an API test case will not show you what is happening, but we will get the response here. And you saw I did not need to start anything on my machine. It happened fully in the cloud, and that's what we are going to deliver with the cloud agents. OK. Now comes the interesting part, I think, where most people are waiting on. That's how you upload your test case. So all know this view, I guess. Who doesn't know it? This is SAP Solution Manager. This is how you were tracking your automated test or your entire solution documentation. And I have here OK. That's when you preload your system. Just Let's give it a few seconds. There we go. Okay. So this is the test configuration where it tells me, okay, this is a Tricentis Tosca test case, which you can see here on the top, that it says Tricentis. And I can execute it. It tells me all the good things about this test case. So if I launch this test case, to see it in the old Tosca on-prem solution, which is called the Tosca Commander, which maybe someone is familiar with it. You see, it takes its time to start, and then it will jump directly to this test case. There we go. And this is a simple create sales order process where we just create a sales order and that's it. Nothing special, but you can imagine that can be a long end-to-end test case, etc. And you see I also have the blob ID and the version number here. So how do I get this now in the cloud? I simply do a right-click and say upload to the cloud. For sure, I need to authenticate with my cloud provider, and it's linked in the background with my cloud tenant. I select my workspace, and I click Upload. That's it. Now the test case is in the cloud. And I even can open that in the cloud. Now you see exactly these steps which we just saw in the so-called old UI, or in the classical Tosca Commander, fully in the browser, right? So here I have exactly my steps, which are now in the cloud. What would be the logical next step? I want to bring that over to SAP Cloud ALM, no? So simple as that, I have my import button here on top. I select my automation provider. And then I just need to remember how I call my test case. There we go. Was just imported into, that's the creation date within the cloud environment, right? So I can now import that, map it to a scope, can also map it to a solution process. And then very, very important, we need to mark that this test case is also now able to be executed. As long as it's in preparation, you know you will not be able to execute. We save that. And then for demo purposes, we will execute it on my machine now so that you see what's happening and also see the GUI automation as part of it. There we go. So initial was never executed before, and I just press execute within SAP Cloud ALM. And now you see this orange frame is actually indicating that it's used my machine to execute the test case. And now, within a few minutes, we will launch the SAP GUI, and we will log into the system and create a sales order. The only thing you have with cloud products will depend on the Wi-Fi. So Okay, that's the demo effect. But should also not harm us, because I can update and see, in theory, then what went wrong, right? So I can also jump here to the window. Maybe I interfered now with the system. I couldn't find the right system. Okay. But we can also trigger it from, there we go. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Okay. If you want to see it later on, I show it on the booth, okay? I can promise you it works. I don't know what's happening right now. But I can promise you it works also for GUI automation, it works for everything. But not to waste more time, sorry for that. Let's jump back into the presentation. But we have many other things on the roadmap, as you can see. We transition everything to the cloud. We have certain other features, such as the Copilot, which Matthias will present in a minute. We also are working on something which is called the Cloud Scanner, that you can fully record a test case in the cloud, which enables you with a zero-footprint automation as well. And on the other side, we also have something where we work with our colleagues in the test management to provide you with an AI for creating manual test cases out of your requirements, user stories, etc. Good. With that, Matthias, I hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And great demo. Thank you very much. Good morning from my end. So Alex has just touched on a lot of very exciting updates. So you've seen basically the 4 key updates that we delivered since last year. And Alex actually went for the Holy Grail in his demonstration and tried to show you the combination of some of these features. So you've basically seen the Solution Manager integration that is used to link to a Tosca test case. Then we have seen, which is an existing functionality, then we have essentially seen how you can upload from the old world into the new world a test case. Currently, we only support single test cases for this upload. I want to be very clear. So in this roadmap, you can see that we are actually calling out this cloud transition in 2 phases. Phase 1, which is the single test case upload that we just shipped in Q3. And we are going to extend this to allow uploading multiple test cases and eventually entire databases. So we are taking this in steps. But if you have certain test cases you would like to try out in the cloud, you can do this already today. If you have a small portfolio, you might be even able to upload this already with this capability. But long term, we know portfolios realistically are large. And we have to allow bulk uploads and also entire databases at once. So that's what we're working on. The other things that Alex has quickly shown you in kind of a sneak peek, because the tenant that he has access to actually already has cloud agents enabled. And he showed you this with the API automation. So the API test case that you can build today, that's something we delivered in Q2 this year. You can execute them with your regular team agents. But in the future, you will be able to execute test cases also without any agent deployed. And this is exactly what those cloud agents are. And there was this split screen where you have seen basically a browser embedded in our application. That's exactly how those cloud agents, in combination with the Cloud Scan, which is here listed for Q2, are going to surface. So thank you very much, Alex. It was an awesome demo. I didn't know that you can string these things together like this, and we definitely have to take a look at desktop automation as well later. But I would like to now talk about these orange highlights here. So I'm picking a couple of things that are future functionality, Copilot, test data management specifically, and then Alex will also talk a little bit about this manual test case functionality that was also mentioned earlier. So what are we doing on test data management? So maybe before I start, Tricentis, Tosca/ECT and/or STA, the cloud version of Tosca that we have also just seen in the demo, they do provide already a rich way of managing test data. And when I say managing test data, I mean essentially defining what test data a automated test case needs to work successfully, right? So, and there are multiple mechanics that exist in the product that allow you to manage that. So I'll give you a couple of examples to make this a bit more tangible. So the simplest way of using data is straight input data, right? You need a material number, you need a sales organization, you need a quantity to book a sales order. So this is straight input data. But once you have booked the sales order, you also get output data, which is the order number. And the order number needs to be saved and carried on to the next part of the process. So essentially, we need a mechanic that allows us to provide input data to test cases. We need a mechanic that allows us to carry over output data from test case to test case. These are just two use cases where test data comes into play, and both Tosca Private Cloud /on-prem and also Public Cloud cover that. However, there are more use cases, right? So for example, it may be that you're altering test data over time. So this order number is used by another tester, is used by another test case. A delivery gets booked against it. Maybe some quantity that you ordered got delivered. The other quantity didn't get delivered, so there is still quantity left on the order. So these are all complicated dependencies, how the data is modified as it ages or is used by other testers. And this is a complicated problem, I understand that, and we offer means to model that out and do this. However, in the future, we would like to make this easier. So the goal of our test data management initiative is, as we bring this to the cloud, that we solve these problems more conveniently for you, right? They can be solved today, but we would like to solve them in a more easier and natural way. And the way we think about this is, ultimately, most of the problems that I was describing have something to do with the dependencies that sit on the data. And the dependencies come largely from the process it's used in, right? And not only the process, but the processes, because there are multiple, maybe, that are using certain data objects. So therefore, we thought, okay, when we bring this to the cloud, let's start with a process-centric view that shows us how the data is used and potentially modified. And a process basically has activities, and these activities are using or generating data. That's kind of how we think about it. And what would that whole approach be without also a data-centric view, right? A dashboard where you can see basically all the different data. Let me maybe go back a bit and pause this so we can see this for a moment. Let's see if I can pause that. Yeah, that works. So, can you pause it, Alex? Yeah, Thank you. Cool. So what would it be without a data-centric dashboard? And imagine you have all these different, sales order numbers, you have all these different input data. So it would be good to maybe have an overview, what kind of sales order numbers do I have, what criteria do they fulfill? So we are thinking that we want to summarize this, that you can see basically the data estate that our solution is aware of. Granted that the data will physically reside, of course, in your SAP systems, right? It's not physically residing in our system. We just know which transactional data should be in the SAP system, and we can visualize that for you. The other thing that, let's play it again. Yeah, keep going, Alex. So I talked about this process perspective. So what you're really thinking is that, you would start with defining the process that generates or consumes data. So you define the process steps, right? And you blow this whole thing out, and then for each step, as you create this and blow it out, you would then also define what data is associated with these process steps. So that's kind of the experience that we are thinking of currently. You've seen that this is planned for essentially, and you can keep going, Alex, it blows the process out a little bit and then it stops anyway. Yeah, exactly. So, and we're currently thinking about such an experience where each of these boxes then, defines what data it generates and uses and how the data sequence runs through the process. I'm quite excited about this concept. It's currently planned to become available, if I'm not mistaken, we had it started for Q2 or later next year. So we're still a bit, I guess, a couple of months away from this hitting GA availability. But if any of you is curious to try this out or experiment, please come by later and talk to me and Alex, because we are currently looking for user feedback on it to make the solution even better when it comes to life in a couple of months. So the second topic I want to quickly touch on is AI. And you've probably heard a lot about AI already during the rest of this week. There were a couple of presentations. But I think it's very important to also talk about what are we doing with AI in testing and what is going to hit the market soon from Tricentis in this space. And there is, in this bucket of AI, there's basically two topics I would like to talk about briefly. The first one is the Tricentis Vision AI. Some of you might have heard about this already, but that's something that we really want to take to market very soon as we launch also the Tricentis Copilot, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And what is Vision AI doing? So Vision AI is a proprietary Tricentis-trained machine learning model that is able to visually interpret user interface screens. And that makes the solution very powerful. So there are multiple use cases how this AI model can work and what it can help us with. One use case is indicated here. So because this model is visually interpreting screens, it doesn't really care how the screen looks like, really, right? So it's trying to recognize controls and fields on the screen that it sees visually. And therefore, you can cover a use case where you would, for example, draw a mock-up on paper, take a picture of it, and let Tosca interpret that picture and find the fields on the picture, which it does, right? That's what we see. So we are clicking through the fields of the picture. And then, once this application becomes available in version 1, which is the one in the middle, the white one, or then gets updated to version 2, which is the dark one, or maybe there is a dark mode that's being introduced, it doesn't care that this is now not a paper-drawn mock-up anymore, or a white or a black version of that screen. It still finds the fields, and it can still execute an automated test against those fields. One use case for it. Another use case that this enables is actually, and I don't have such a fancy visualization for it, is basically that it enables self-healing of test automation, right? Because it can visually interpret what's on the screen, it can help conventional methods of finding fields and controls on the screen with this visual perspective and say, you don't find it, but I'm finding it visually, and here is where we should click, and please update your click properties to this because this now looks differently. So these work in conjunction and enable also the use case of self-healing. Quite exciting, but that's not all. So let's talk a bit about Copilot. And the Tricentis Copilot is, the way we think about this is basically, it's a very, I guess, familiar concept at this point, right? It's a chatbot-like interface that you're interacting with and will offer a variety of different skills. And we currently believe that the skills it should provide is essentially, explaining something, interpreting something, or actually executing a task for you, So these are the 3 categories of skills that the Tricentis Copilot will have. And we already equipped it with essentially 3 different skills, and these skills will get enhanced as we speak with additional capabilities that fall into these 3 categories. And the first one that we already have built, and that will be in the first version once it hits the market, is to explain a test case. So you know that Tricentis Tosca is a no-code environment to create test automation, right? So we are not scripting. However, if you have a very long test case, it can still be very difficult to understand what this test case is doing when you are not the author of the test case. It's very similar to you reading a 100 pages long Word document. Even though you have perfect skills of German or English to read it, it's going to be very hard for you to understand what the author meant by it and what is the intent behind the document, right? It takes you quite some thinking time to figure that out. So this is the same. The same is true for test automation. These test cases can get very long, and if you're not the author, it's very difficult to understand the intent and purpose of the test. So this problem we want to solve with this, and the Copilot will be able to explain what this test case is essentially doing in a short summary. It's quite helpful, especially when you communicate with business users, for example. The second use case that we are covering, and here's, I think, a quick demo of how that looks like. Yeah, exactly. So this is just how the experience is to get the explanation of the test. The second one is interpreting and analyzing execution results. So, when tests are automated, once they're automated, the majority of the work is to figure out what the execution result actually means, right? So you're letting 1,000 tests run overnight or whatever, and then it's all about, okay, what does red mean, right? That's the question. So what we are now working on is to provide insights on what a red test results may mean, and we make basically interpretation for you. This is actually quite difficult, and we're getting we're getting to a point where we can already determine some false positives, where we say, this is probably timeout related. This is not a functional issue, so the system was a bit slower today, right? These are the kinds of interpretations that we are trying to get out of this to make the analysis for you easier. And here is again, I think, a quick example that shows this in action. And the last feature that I want to quickly show here is that, Tosca also has its own very powerful query language to analyze your test portfolio, your test estate. Now, I've been with Tricentis for a very long time myself, and I have never quite fully figured out how this query language works, to be fully honest. And I'm not the only one, right? Our users also have that problem quite frequently when I talk to them. So we figured, why not just train this AI to generate these queries from plain English? And here is what we are basically doing. So we are asking the AI to search for duplicates, for duplicate modules, and it generates the query for that question, and you can then immediately in the Copilot also execute that query, and you get the results of the query, and you see that we found 2 duplicates of modules here, and that can now be refactored because you don't want duplicates, right? So you would want to merge them. There are merge tasks as well available in Tosca, and very likely we will enhance this use case in the future also with an automatic merge. And then you have cleaned up the portfolio, essentially. Now, what's next? These 3 are already working, but we're extending the skills that the Copilot has. And the next one is that we introduce a help assistant. So that means the Copilot is deeply aware with our product documentation and can give you step-by-step instructions how to fulfill a certain task yourself. So, for example, if you don't know how to create a module, or what a module even is in Tosca, it will answer that. And then you can also ask it, how do I create a module? And then we'll give you the instructions of how to create a module. These instructions, the way you see them here, are not in a documentation, right? So this step-by-step instruction is not in a documentation. So the AI comes up with those instructions and tells you how to do it. And I guess with that, I hand it back over to you, Alex, to close us out on the last update.
Thanks, Matthias. So what is the next step, and also what we are working on together to enhance AI-generated manual test cases? What about you have the best practice content and you have everything, but you still need to define the user actions. But even if you know them, right, you need to provide the data, you need to provide the step-by-step descriptions sometimes. But we have all that information in SAP Cloud ALM. We have our solution process flow, right? So what would be the narrative to create a test case out of that? Well, we actually ask our friends at Tricentis to help us with that. And this is currently something where we jointly work on providing this as a feature into SAP Cloud ALM, that based on your requirements and user stories, documents, etc., all the information you have in SAP Cloud ALM, we actually generate a manual test case out of that, powered by the AI. So that really you click and you get concrete instructions for your testers, for your business users, fully automated. And I guess the next step would be that we also can create automated test cases, right, Matthias?
That's right. Working on it.
So maybe if you saw on the slides before, there was also a button, generate test cases. I don't know, I quickly go back. So that, you see the first point? Yeah. That's also something we're thinking about, right? So if we have all the capabilities of Vision AI and we have the description of the process and we have the data flows, imagine what is possible. Okay, and with that, I just go quickly through. We open up for you. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the presentation. It's really amazing for me to see this. At our company, we are looking heavily into test automation, also test management. I'm missing in this summit any words about Q-test. Is it on purpose that Q-test was not mentioned? Because in our opinion, it also looks like an interesting tool.
Well, as we are having these capabilities within SAP Cloud ALM, where we do the test management, and to be quite honest, Q-test is not on the SAP price list because we have the same capabilities in SAP Cloud ALM. So that's why we are not, or I am not talking about Q-test, to be honest. Okay.
Understood, thank you. The next question, my second question would be, I've gone through the trainings of the Tricentis Academy, and one difficulty I had sometimes when I wanted to rerun my test cases was that an identifier was now not unique anymore. Am I right to assume that this Tosca Vision AI will improve this? Because, awesome.
So I guess that answered it, but yes. So that's exactly one of the cases where self-healing that will be provided by Vision AI would help. That it would find out, okay, I didn't find that property anymore. Give me, please help me, where is that control, and tell me what property would now be accurate. So it tries to self-heal exactly such situations. All right, thank you.